Hello, Tampa. It is Saturday morning, and you're listening to another great episode of Let's Go Low. This is your host, Jeff Stanislow with Golfers Unite. We are picking up on our conversation for those higher to mid handicappers that are looking to break 100, 90, or even 80. And we're talking with Emily Nowak, and our focus for this segment is part two of our conversation regarding chipping. These green side things that we're going to talk about, probably putting and chipping, are where most amateurs can shave strokes. Get that dialed in, and you'll start seeing your scores fall for sure. So, Emily, thanks again for joining us.
Yep, thank you for having me.
So in the last episode, we talked about a few things, making kind of a good selection for the right wedge to bring to a green side shot. We're not talking specifically about the traps, but what we're talking about is, when you got a clear direction to the pin, how you do that. Traps will probably be a separate conversation, a separate dialogue, and what have you. So if you're listening to the show and you got a sand trap, we're not going to be able to help you out today. So good luck to you. Maybe tune in next week and we'll get a sand trap episode going for you. So Emily, let's recap on our ball position and what happens when a wedge is used, just for our listeners.
Yeah, so last episode or last segment, we talked about how the ball position affects the ball flight and how you can change it to easily change those ball flights. So if you put the ball back in your stance, you're going to have a lower shot that spins, checks on the green a little bit and runs out. If you move it up in your stance up to the middle, you'll have a shot that flies a little bit higher, still kind of checks for you. And then if you move it all the way up in your stance, you'll have a much higher shot that's going to land soft for you. So just changing that ball position will change that trajectory of your shot.
Perfect summary. And then we also talked a little bit about how important the weight is and where they should be putting their weight and the reason why. You want to recap on that?
Yep. So when we line up for a chip shot or a wedge shot of any sort, we want 75 to 80% of our weight to be forward, and we want to keep it there. The way that I kind of word it for my juniors is when you sway, the club forgets where home is. So now it's going to bottom out early, or it's going to thin your shot. So you want to avoid swaying as much as possible. Keep that body still over the ball. Keep that weight forward throughout the whole swing.
Excellent. You heard it here right on Let's Go Low, AM 820, the Big 8, Saturday mornings. This is your host, Jeff Stanislow, and our special guest, Emily Nowak. Emily was a PGA professional and worked at many resorts doing coaching and training for members and the youth, giving back to the youth and doing those types of programs. Graduate of Ferris State University in the professional golf management program. So we have a real expert here and that can give us some great information. Now, moving forward to some of the things that we didn't get a chance to talk about, let's talk about, some people say choke down on the grip. What are your thoughts on that? I think it's the right thing to do. Get you over the ball a little bit more, get your swing a little bit more compact.
I think it's choking down the grip is one way to look like a pro out there when you're not. Giving yourself the full length of the club, that's never a great way to start a short game shot. So yeah, I'd choke down about probably 2 to 3 inches, about halfway down the club for every wedge shot. And just kind of take the same stroke. So if you have to go up a club, you have to go up a club. But yeah, I would start every short game shot choke down about halfway down the grip.
Okay. So the other thing that, I wanted to talk about with the grip, it ties in pretty well, is how hard should you grip it? I've seen, people strangle the club. I've seen people I don't even know how you hold on to the club because it's so loose. What's a good grip pressure for when you're making these, shots, greenside, wedge shots?
I would say just beyond enough to hold it. You don't want to be squeezing it, that you don't want it flying out of your hand or spinning in your hands, but you do want a really light grip on it. Tiger Woods says it's like a baby bird. So yeah, I would say Feel wise, it's probably looser than you think, but you want to still have a pretty good grip on there. So I would say just beyond what you need to hold on to it, make sure it doesn't spin in your hands. And way of doing that is you kind of feel the grip more in your fingers, going up your fingers rather than up the palm of your hand. If you get it in those palms, that's when you close the whole hand around the grip. You're gripping it really tight and you're wearing out your gloves really fast as well.
Yeah, and at 30-40 bucks a glove nowadays, you
Yeah.
gotta protect those gloves. So Emily Nowak is I guess a with Golfers Unite and a brand ambassador, and works with us, and she actually has her own social channels. Why don't you tell us what that is, in case our listeners really like what you're talking about, Emily, they can find you.
Yeah, so I run the Fairway Femme Club. It's you can look me up on all social media, Fairway Femme Club, and it originally started with simple golf instruction, but it's kind of evolved into women's golf history in general. But I still post some swing tips on there. So if you're looking for tips, super basic tips, go to Fairway Femme Club on all social media and find all different golf content on there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Emily. Now let's talk about the turn and the finish and removing the hand flip, no arms, all wrist type things. What should amateur golfers, or, those people trying to break, 190, 80, really start thinking about their chest and the turn when making a chip up onto the green?
Yeah, so something that a lot of people do is they don't keep that shoulder tilt. So they just kind of swing parallel instead of tilting their shoulders. So as you swing back, kind of feel that left shoulder tilting down towards the ball a little bit. As you come through, it'll be the same. The right shoulder will now come through and is facing down towards where the ball is. We want to avoid keeping our shoulders super straight and just kind of turning in the air. The other thing that people do is they get super wristy with their turn. So you don't want to get super wristy with your chip shots. People getting too wristy and people swaying. Those are the two biggest mistakes I see. So as you go through, if you're not breaking your wrists, if you're not flipping your wrists back, don't flip them through on the follow through. And then with the follow through, I want you to think of following through as far as you take the club back. So we don't want this super short stroke back and then the club finishing over our left shoulder when we never swung it back that far in general. So that's the same with putting, chipping, everything. You generally follow through as far as you took the club back.
Very, very good points. This is Jeff Stanislow. You're listening to Let's Go Low right here on AM 820, the Big 8, every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Set your alarm clock for it. Brought to you by Golfers Unite, golfersunite.com. Check out all the hookups we have at golfersunite.com. So Emily, you brought up a really good point in regards to the finish through with your chest, and a lot of times, and keeping it really consistent and not letting your wrist do it. What usually happens when you kind of start flipping your wrist is that point of impact changes so quickly at the bottom. And if you're really wristy and not using your body to kind of turn and stay connected, it gives you a lot of various results, which we were trying to avoid, right?
Yep, especially if you're just using those arms. And yeah, once you get those wrists bending, it's all timing now, and you just have to time that up perfectly. So yeah, I like to just think of my arms, my chest as a triangle, and you're just turning that triangle as one piece as you chip back, as you hit that chip shot. So if you are breaking that triangle, you're breaking your wrists, the club is now collapsing too early, or all kinds of inconsistencies happen. So
lots of things can go wrong when you break the triangle.
You can't even predict what's going to happen. Yep.
You made a really good point. A lot of things that I even myself personally, I find myself like, taking it back a little bit and then kind of like using the muscles to force it forward and then finishing high. I think having that nice tempo where, keeping, especially for an amateur golfer, it's like, okay, if you're bringing it back, to a certain point to finish to a certain point, and then that's something that's repeatable and you can practice, and then you can also judge the distance for that point. Now you can start working in all those distances. Okay, if I'm going to go halfway back, it's going to be a 30-yard chip, you know what I mean? If I'm, a quarter way back, then it's going to be a 10-yard chip. So I think that's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, and paying attention to that. So yeah, don't just go out there and practice your chip shots and say, wow, that was a cool shot. Kind of take note of how far that halfway shot went. And yeah, as long as you have those hands pressed forward over that left foot, swing back, your wrists are already broken, like your wrists are already hinged if your hands are pressed forward properly. So have that set up, get a proper setup, and then just rotate those shoulders, come on through, shorter follow through, and you're good to go. It's fun to take that long follow through, kind of finesse it a little bit, but it's not helping your game.
Exactly. Exactly. Probably, a lot of people talk about bounces in their clubs,
Mhm.
right? As a higher handicapper, you probably don't even know they exist. You just,
Yeah.
you got a degree and you're going to hit it. But you start getting down to the people that play a lot and, they're trying to, break 80. They might be, in the discussion about the bounces. What would be probably a good standard bounce, and what is a bounce, and, how do people understand what it is? But what would be a good standard bounce for a mid handicap player?
Yeah, I would say I think people do need a little more bounce than they think usually. So something around like I play really high bounce. But yeah, probably like a 6 or 7 will help you out on the course. But it really depends where you play. So if you're playing desert courses, you might struggle with some higher bounce because that's going to bounce you off that turf when there's really nowhere to dig. If you're playing kind of the longer grass courses, then that's when you want to go up and bounce. So if you are out in the desert, I would go lower bounce. And if you are playing softer courses like up in Michigan or something with a longer rough, I would go with a higher bounce to kind of bounce out of that rough.
Yeah, and don't think you have to change clubs by where you're going. Just get good with what you got. But
Yeah,
if you live in Arizona and you're on a tight course and that's your home course and you put a lot of rounds in there, then it's probably a good recommendation to go with the lower bounce because it
yeah, yeah,
it pinches
exactly.
better, right? The
Yeah,
higher, yep.
yeah,
So if you
exactly. So yeah, just if you're consistently playing somewhere like that, then yeah, I would change it. But otherwise, just kind of get a general idea of what you need. Usually like a 6 or 7 is a pretty good bounce for mid handicappers.
so let's talk a little bit about, um, the flight that you want. you know so you got a pin, it's got a ridge, you know what I mean. I tend to play more of the bump and run because I kind of
Mhm.
dial in my distance. Now the only thing that I'll do is if I have a ridge in front of me, or something like that, I might, change my elevation and move my ball position towards the front so I can get a little loft over top of the ridge and let it land soft and continue on. um, that's kind of what I do. But maybe when's a good time to not chip? Let's talk a little bit about that. When
Yeah.
not chip, you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
so if there's something in front of you, so if we have some long grass that's really gonna hinder the chip shot rolling out, then we probably can't chip. Or if there's a bunker in front of you, um,
Maybe
what, yeah, sorry,
and one thing, the loft is going to help you with that, right? Once you get your
yeah,
dialed in, you got your lower bump and run, you got your mid tier, and then you got your high tier. So now if you're off the green and maybe there's a little corner of a trap that comes in, you should feel
yeah,
comfortable with, moving that ball position up in your stance,
yeah, and
getting your
flying it
weight on the
over,
left foot, working your triangle, and now you know your distance that you want to get your loft. That's the
yeah.
whole purpose of what we're kind of talking about here
Yeah,
today.
and yeah, if there's nothing in front of you, that's when I would, if even if it's a long shot where you have to get it up the ridge, if there's nothing in front of you, like a bunker or long grass, putt it, hit that Jack Nicklaus long putt if you have to, hit a bump around with an 8 iron. But yeah, if there's something in front of you, that's when we're gonna have to move it up and unfortunately hit that higher lofted shot.
Yes, exactly. So what type of drills would you recommend for chipping? Some people talk about, a towel or a head cover 3 feet under the green, land it there, ignore the holes, or, even a trail hand chip, which kind of exposes a flip, so
Yeah.
what type of drills do you give to your people when they're around the green?
Yeah, I believe in a lot of feel with chip. So I'm a huge advocate for dialing in your landing zone. So yeah, putting a bucket, putting a head cover, putting something on the green to just land it there over and over and over again, ignoring the hole like you said. Or there's like ladder drills where you can see how far it runs out and practice running it out just a little bit farther each time. There's all kinds of stuff, and chipping, like I said, is a feel thing. So if you're struggling with something, go on YouTube, look it up, and
Sure.
there's tons of drills out there. But yeah, I love a ladder drill. I love a land it in the bucket drill. Those are my two favorites for feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like, or a bucket or throw a head cover out to distance. Know that head cover is 10 yards,
Yeah.
right? And that's your target, not the pin, because
Yeah.
you want to know what it feels like and what you're doing to hit a 10-yard shot,
And it might
And
look
then
ridiculous, but pace it off too. Like get on the course, pace it off. Now you know what 10 yards feels like. You know how far that bucket is.
fantastic. Well, another great episode coming up on Let's Go Low. This is your host, Jeff Stanislow. Tune in. We're going to talk about putting next. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Jeff.